Hi, my name is Moses Choi, and I am the current CEO of Southeast Regional Center. Southeast Regional Center first started as an automotive regional center on December 2009. So in 2010, we were approved as a federally designated regional center in Georgia and Alabama. So the first start was when Regional Center program really restarted in 2008. We were very first. I believe at that time there were less than maybe 70, maybe 80 regional center. The active regional center, you could count with your finger what regional centers were promoting and recruiting investors. But we had a very specific focus when we first started as a regional center. How do we serve our investor? We wanted to be a regional center not just to promote a project. So the first philosophy we always say is we cannot serve two masters. We cannot serve the project, we cannot serve the investor at the same time. When we first started, we wanted to serve our investor first. That means we disclose fully to our investor. We become as transparent. They see how we operate, how we make our money, what are any conflicts between us and the investor. At that point, there were a lot of Koreans, Chinese investors flooded into EB-5 program. They didn't know any kind of conflict. They didn't know the regional center was actually the project. From my background, working in JP Morgan, there were conflicts of interest, and that conflict, what I've learned from my previous experience, has been very detrimental to the investors. This was in 2008, 2009, and they saw all these projects that had Marriott Hotel, Hilton Hotel franchise, and they thought it was a great project. Well, it wasn't a great project. A lot of projects were mismanaged. You have some failed projects as well. So if you are building a hotel, you don't have all the money that you need. You go to a bank and you borrow 50% of the money. Well, you have to put down 50% as a developer. They didn't have 50% of the money. So what they'll do is they'll borrow from the bank and then put EB-5 for as high as 40%. And some projects that I know, they didn't even put down their own money. What happens then? Who gets all the benefit and who also gets all the risk? EB-5 investor always bear the most risk on the project. When I saw that conflict of interest, I said, well, there must be a better way. So why do we start automotive manufacturing? Because manufacturing, if you look at it, is a lot more safer project than just the real estate. A lot of countries, especially in Korea and in China, they think real estate is the safest project. Well, it was. People feel safe until it is not. In US, we had subprime crisis. Subprime crisis, people bought all this real estate. There was a bubble. Right now, you see a bubble in Korean stock market. And you see this kind of volatility. Market goes up, 5-6%, market goes down. It hits that trigger in the marketplace. What happens after that is when the credit dries up in the economy. Money gets pumped into the economy, real estate market goes up, the credit dries up because of the losses, everybody pulls money. What happens during those times is that real estate market crashes. It comes down much steeper. And especially when you are using other banks' money to make that purchase, it becomes much more volatile. I wanted to focus on automotive industry because automotive industry, we believe, especially for middle class, is a lot safer investment than luxury hotels to ski resorts, other projects that you saw during the EB-5 industry. Hyundai is a global franchise for a number of different industries, but mainly for middle class. They're not Rolls-Royce. They're not Range Rover. These are for mainstream middle class. They need to drive to work. They're going to affordable cars. Hyundai appeals in those markets. And so that industry in itself survived during subprime crisis. People were sleeping in their cars. Their home were foreclosed and they were still sleeping in the car because they had to go to work. And so Hyundai at that point showed me that they have deep enough pocket to withstand downturns within the economy. Some of the people in China, in other countries, they ask, what happens if Hyundai fails? I understand your project is a great project. It's tied to indirectly to Hyundai risk. But what happens if Hyundai fails? A case in point in the United States, if GM failed, if Chrysler was going through a bankruptcy, what happens is Congress bails them out. Why? Because there are very strategic importance on having manufacturing industry in a country. What's happening right now in USA? They want to bring back their manufacturing. They're finding out that it's not a good idea to outsource everything over to another country. Why is Trump trying to raise tariff? Because he wants to reignite manufacturing back to USA. And it's not just manufacturing out in Mexico, bringing in to United States. They want manufacturing industry back to United States. By Hyundai investing billions of dollars, they also need to invite their suppliers. Now, suppliers run with just-in-time inventory with Hyundai. So system of manufacturing between Hyundai and parts suppliers is one manufacturing system. So if one breaks down, the other cannot function. In that situation, we could see very clearly by leveraging Hyundai, we could lend money to its suppliers. And ultimate responsibility would be Hyundai, because Hyundai will not do EB-5 project. They have plenty of money, but their suppliers needed that money. But what Hyundai really needs is their supplier. So we wanted to get a guarantee statement from its supplier. We wanted to file collateral UCCs on their equipment, and that's how we started. We shifted the risk from part supplier to Hyundai by collateralizing equipments, land, building. And that's when we understood the risk to be much better risk and return based upon the projects within EB-5 industry. And you could see from bankruptcy court, very similar case you could see was Hyundai Smart. There was a company called Smart, and they used to manufacture body frames for Hyundai. When they went into bankruptcy, Hyundai came in and they paid off all the collateral lien holders on that bankruptcy. And they came in and rebranded the company as Hyundai Smart. The factory never stopped. It always operated. Because if it stops, the risk to Hyundai is devastating. It's cheaper for Hyundai to come in and just buy out these companies. So that was something that I saw that other EB-5 projects couldn't see. And that is a result of our background experience, looking at different companies, evaluating companies, their relationships. The first project that we started working with, they were a private company and they became public. Once you have EB-5 project with the public companies, then there is a lot more transparency. So the more transparency we have toward our investors, the better they are. The more disclosure we have with our investor, the better they are. Because ultimately, when things goes bad in a project, it doesn't happen overnight. It gradually happens. So we wanted to make sure that there is enough transparency. And for us, Hyundai parts companies, because they're a public company, we were able to see all their inside information, their balance sheet, their income statement, their cash flow, any disclosure that they have. So I believe that is much better investment going into public traded companies in South Korea. What is the main reason EB-5 investors will invest? Why are they taking this risk of now investing $800,000? There's two benefits. One is a green card. They want to obtain a green card. Second, they want their money back. Those are two most important conditions. But what is more important? What is the most important? If we were to rank between green card and getting your money back, our philosophy always had been getting your money back. Most people would say, no, they're doing it for green card. No. Those are equally important, but if we were to rank it, because in our experience, during subprime crisis when real estate market started crashing, when you have lost all your money, most likely you'll also lose job counts from the project. Then you lost your money and you lost your green card, right? Because EB-5 requires job creation. But during also pandemic, because nobody would go into a hotel, a lot of this hotel failed, right? And so they were dependent upon the job creation. When they lost their money, the hotel never got built, never created those jobs, and they lost everything. If the project is able to pay you back, most likely they will deliver green card. Green card is not that difficult. Job creation, other compliance issue is not that difficult. Where we want to focus on is, can the project pay our investors back? And usually, if they could pay you back, they will create the job. They will create the condition so that you will obtain your green card benefits. So, SRC first beginning, we wanted to focus long term. We want to focus on our investors. We want to protect our investors. Make sure that we work for the investor and not for the project. That has been a very clear distinction between other regional centers and other projects. I believe that's the main source why we became successful 17 years later, that we have impeccable track record we could show to our investors, to our EB-5 market.